coming, Governor.
My pleasure.
This was, of course, buried by corporate media, but on Friday, the Louisiana Fifth Circuit held up the ruling that the Biden administration absolutely infringed on our First Amendment rights in the social media case. And in that 74-page ruling, they said it was the worst assault on the First Amendment by the government in American history. All we hear from the left is us crazy Republicans are a threat to democracy. And clearly, this is a threat to democracy. These are our constitutional rights. We're tired of being them trampled. What do you do now to hold them accountable? Because I think this playbook's going to happen in a year and a half again. And then if you're president, what do you do to get the government out of our face?
Oh, look, that's what I was talking about before, right? When we were talking about the issue of free speech in the campaign finance area, which is once you start to get into that area of saying what people can say and what they can't, it's a very, very dangerous area. And people will rationalize doing things like what the Biden administration did. Their rationalization, of course, was, oh, they were trying to protect people, right? And I think it's just dead wrong. And it wasn't really what their motivation was, in my view. Their motivation was to suppress speech that they didn't want to see because they thought it was contrary to their political interests. And essentially, that's what the ruling said. Now, what we need to do about it, first off, and this goes back to rule of law and law and order. And that's why I give the answer I gave to your question as well. We don't have inferior constitutional rights. Every one of those rights in the Bill of Rights were well thought out, most of them first by our founders, and then by subsequent political leaders in this country who thought they were important enough to make them constitutional. And so the first thing is, we need to have a president who respects the Constitution. And right now, it's obvious from what Joe Biden and his administration was involved in, he does not. But we got to be honest too. When Donald Trump said it would be okay to suspend the Constitution if he thought that the election had been stolen from him, no. It is never okay. The oath that I hope to take in January of 2025 makes me swear to God that I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, not suspend. And so both sides have done things, differing degrees of gravity. But when you violate our Constitution, and you're a leader who violates our Constitution, I don't think there's any graver crime you can commit than to do that. So the first thing is you need a president at the top who's going to say, look, some days the Constitution is going to cut in my political favor and sometimes it's going to cut against me. That's the way it goes. It's my job to figure out how to do the very best I can while operating with respect and inside that Constitution. Secondly, we got to stop appointing attorneys general who are the wingman for the president. Okay? This started with Obama. He appointed Eric Holder. And he let all kinds of stuff go on in this country that shouldn't have. And then Loretta Lynch after that. Jeff Sessions was a lousy attorney general. Right? And now, this character, Merrick Garland, is not, covering himself in glory in any way. Right? Because they're hired to be the president's lawyer. Guess what? The attorney general is not the president's lawyer. The attorney general is the lawyer for the United States of America and its people. And his or her job, first and foremost, is to defend that Constitution and enforce law and order. So the second thing I would do is appoint an attorney general, and I would say this to them. Go off and do your job, and if it respects any crime, don't come back and talk to me. Follow the law and follow the Constitution without fear, favor, or bias of any kind. If you do that, if it cuts against me one day, that's my problem, not your problem. Fourth, we need as a country to once again understand what free speech really means. It means we have to listen to people that we horribly disagree with. We're so divided in this country now, and we only watch the news that we agree with. We don't want to go to cocktail parties or dinner parties where someone supports the other side. We get up and leave. Never used to be that way. That's a lack of respect for free speech. I love these town hall meetings. I really loved them when I did them in New Jersey. I did over 150 of them, during the time I was governor. And there were a lot of times where people really gave it to me. sometimes I thought unfairly. But you know what? That's free speech. We need to go back to recognizing that you really want to be a First Amendment protector? You protect the speech of the person whose opinion absolutely sickens you, that you think is awful for the country. But I'm going to defend that man or woman's right to say it, because I don't want, when the government's not in my control, to have something they don't like and they prevent me from saying it. And this is the big government. It's bigger than liberal or conservative. It's big government versus limited government. I want the government out of my business. I don't want them telling me what to do, right? And look, we've got Republicans in this race who want to do that. Governor DeSantis is down there, kicking the hell out of Disney. Now look, I don't like some of the stuff Disney did, but you know what? It's their choice to do it. They want to oppose a bill that he was in favor of. If I went against every person who opposed the bill I was in favor of when I was governor of New Jersey, that's all I would have spent my time doing. And I've asked people who say, well, I like what DeSantis is doing about Disney. Do you really? Because guess what? What happens if the next governor of Florida is a liberal governor and puts forward a really liberal piece of legislation, and Disney comes out and says we're against it, and he punishes Disney? I guarantee you those people who are on the conservative side, like me, some of those people would have said, well, no, that I don't think the governor should be able to do. Well, man, my mother taught me this a long time ago. I didn't know what it meant when she started telling me, but now I do. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So we've got to respect speech on both sides. And what's so disturbing about that Fifth Circuit opinion is that it was absolutely intentional. What the Biden administration did, they did on purpose. They did on purpose to suppress speech that they disagree with. In the same way in Florida, we should not be penalizing companies who speak out against what we're for. We should win the argument. See, what I always thought, maybe it's because I come from a blue state, so I always have arguments all the time. We've got to win the argument, not rig the law or take constitutional rights away to get rid of that argument. Let's beat it. I think we're the party that should win because I think our ideas are better. And if we act consistent with the Constitution, our ideas are better, we're going to do fine. So that's the way I would do it if I were president. And by the way, there's a whole lot of people in the government who don't belong there, right? And so when you're president, you have the ability to get rid of a lot of them. And we should. Because we should have people who serve in the government who are there to do their job without fear, favor, or partisanship. If you're a career person, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And I knew this in New Jersey. I'll end the answer with this. I wanted to change something one time, and there was a career person in the Department of Human Services. I had her in my office. I was trying to tell her why I wanted to do this. And in the midst of that meeting, she was there with two other folks. I got up to take a phone call from my wife. So I picked up the phone. They said, do you want to sleep? I said, no, this will be quick. And I picked up the phone, but my wife had put me on hold. So they didn't know that, though. So they thought I was listening to her because I wasn't talking. And the one woman turned to the other one and said, don't worry, just ignore him. We were here when he got here. We'll be here when he leaves. So what I did, I didn't respond to it at any point. She sat down, back down, we talked. I escorted them out, and I took the entire program that she ran, and I moved it to another department. And she called me and said, well, what am I supposed to do now? And I said, well, maybe go home. Because, you know what? I'm going to be here longer than you, as it turns out.
We've got about 10 more minutes, so...